door that was a little white door that led into a narrow kitchen where there was a bench with tables for the kids to eat off. We were put there and fed, then led into the bedrooms, and my sister and I were put into a large room with about 10 bunk beds. So I'm scrolling up. Bunk beds. I wanted the top bunk, but my sister wanted it, so I gave it to her. I had the bottom. I don't really remember much about this home, but all I remember was waking in the night and screaming for my father, and a lady coming to talk to me and asking me what was wrong. And she said my mother wasn't well and my father wasn't coming back anymore. Go to sleep now, Sharon, and we'll talk tomorrow. Right, so my name's Sharon in real life. I hate the name. Now go to sleep and we'll talk tomorrow. I screamed at her, asking her where my dad was, crying uncontrollably and telling her to fuck off. I'm young. I've always been a bit aggy. She said I was a bad child. No wonder my mother was ill. I'd drawn her to it. As she closed the door and left me alone, lay there in the dark, crying for my dad. I remember the huge house we lived in for a few years in Gidea Park, Romford. It was like a refuge house. If I can recall, we were... Stop it. I'm all right. Otherwise I wouldn't read it. But this is what autobiographies are for, recollection, isn't it? I remember the huge house we lived in for a few years after Gidea Park, Romford. It was a refuge. If I can recall, we were all taken there after the children's home, but can't recollect the time scale, so I can't remember if it was like 5 to 6 or 6 to 7. There were lots of families in this house, and there was full of fun and laughter for the mothers. There were tears and the pain from destructive relationships that had been together that had gone through to this refuge. We stayed in this room with the biggest wardrobe ever in it, and my siblings, I won't mention their names, and I would play The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. Do you remember that, people? When they used to go into the wardrobe and it was Lion, Witch and the Wardrobe, and they'd go into Narnia. That's what this wardrobe was like. If I entered this wardrobe, all my troubles would disappear and I would be happy. But deep down inside, I knew I had a hell of a ride coming towards me in my life. But even at 9, I knew that it would all end up happy for me. It was like my favourite book, Cinderella, and one day I would meet my prince. Was this really going to be my fate? Crazy. Right, please. Oh no, because I'm going to have to be careful. But this is brutal how I talk. But I have to watch myself when I say on here that it's not any racist comments. So I'm going to put the Indian man, but I use another terminology. Turned up again. I used to think, who is he? What does he want? Him and cunt, that's what I call her, used to disappear while we played downstairs in the main hall. Used to have massive long staircase and the biggest curtains you've ever seen, which we used to swing off. Used to have a massive great big window with these curtains, and we used to swing off the curtains. So all the mothers would watch us play on the curtains while she disappeared, obviously into a room of the unknown. Sort of like the ones at The Sound of Music. Then we get into a car called now. It was called a Princess, the car. And if anybody knows anything about cars, the Princess used to raise up. Where is it? Staircase. Then we used to get in a car called the Princess. I don't know if we remember them, but as the engine started, it used to raise up like a hovercraft. We'd drive off. Anyway, the Indian man was called Milkia. I didn't like him. He was sort of creepy and used to stare at me in a really weird way. That sounds like a sad childhood. You should be proud where you are now. 100%. He used to look back in the rearview mirror and smile at me like a dirty old pervert. I used to think, Indian bastard, but P word, I hate you. Then we'd go on day trips to the park and cunt would be giggling like a fucking little schoolgirl. Dirty little fucking slag, I used to think, the way she used to do it with the other Indian man called Kirit. She had 2 Indian guys, Kirit and Milkia. I used to look at him thinking, you dirty Indian lover. I'm sorry, but this is the way my book is. I'm sorry the way I speak. I'm not a racist, by the way, but that's what we used to get put in our brain when we was younger. Hence why I proper don't like integrating relationships. It makes me feel sick now. I was 9 and we walked through Romford to the other side of the town where all I remember was a huge bridge and my mother panicking over the fucking bridge she had to walk over. I used to think, why is she always a bit of a fucking drama queen? That made me so annoyed as she would say things like, oh, you can't go over that bridge, it might collapse. So my mum, the C word, I'll just say the C word, used to panic attack everything. Don't go driving, you can't drive because you'll crash the car, you can't go on a plane because it'll crash, you can't walk over bridges because they'll collapse. And her life was lived with constant fear of everything, and that's why I do what I do. Constantly do, and I push myself to do things because she made us believe that we couldn't do nothing and everything was dangerous. Doesn't that tell you that she was so ill though? No, she wasn't ill. You'll find out later in the book. Don't judge Shells. You find out later in the book that she's a drama queen and a fucking attention seeker. And you'll hear in a minute. Well, you won't, because I've got to go in a minute. Panic was a bit of a drama queen and made me so annoyed as she would say things like, oh, you can't go over that bridge, you get panic attacks. I used to think, silly fucking bitch, her fears are fucking pathetic. I'm never going to be like her. Anyway, it took me about half an hour to get over this damn bridge, and on the other side was my future of pain and misery and sadness. This horrible looking masonette style council housing estate. We took to this spiral staircase and opened the glass door to reveal a bloody long balcony with doors on its side, looking strange to me as I've never seen anything like this before. So this was a council estate with two flats, like masonette. So you had the ground floor and the first floor, and they had all doors in them. Yeah. And literally, it was a council estate. We'd never been on council before because we'd obviously lived in a house with my dad. We came to the full red door and my mother took this key and opened it. I went in and saw a kitchen that looked really dated from the 70s, then walked in from one room to the next and just thought, what the fuck is this shithole? Yes, at the age I used to swear through anger, never allowed. The next day it seemed we were in this dated bloody shithole. I chose this rather large room, which I had to share with my blue-eyed sister, and my brother had the small room. My recollections of this house was terrible. It was so cold and damp. My mother had brought a cat called Fluffy. Fucking thing looked more like a fucking large overeaten rat. That was so wild, it used to scratch the fuck out of your face at every opportunity. Used to piss in every room, and where it was so damp, it used to stink all the time of cat's piss, and it was all over our clothes we had to wear. This was 70s. Yeah. So I was born in 1970. Well, we settled in school, and then we started to realise that my mother was hardly home and never really saw her much. She always